Today we're going to be comparing a pair of ultra-compact travel strollers, the brand new Silver Cross Jet and the original ultra-compact and still arguably king of the niche, the Babyzen Yoyo. Since the initial launch of the Yoyo back in 2012, many brands have attempted to produce models capable of fighting for a piece of the stroller as carry-on luggage market. But only in the last couple of years have bigger industry names joined in the fray. Silver Cross is one of them, a stroller manufacturer with over 100 years of experience, whose models in general tend towards more classic designs. For travel strollers, Silver Cross has generally held to the umbrella style, popularized in the latter half of the last century by McLaren, a choice which has seen their appeal slowly decline, as has happened with all umbrella strollers, as new engineering solutions emerging both from the ultra-compact models as well as small-sized daily strollers have brought about a revolution in the industry. The Jet is also essentially an umbrella stroller, but this is actually part of what makes it interesting, because in needing to build it such that it could fold down small enough to pass as carry-on luggage, Silver Cross incorporated a number of more modern style mechanisms to re-envision the umbrella design. The Babyzen Yoyo probably doesn't need much of an introduction for most people, but if I were to define why the Yoyo has maintained its dominant position for so long, I would say that it is that ultra-compact model so far which best utilizes the size and weight economies inherent in the ultra-compact concept to produce an extra sturdy, extra simple chassis built of high-quality materials. Let's start off with some stats. The Silver Cross Jet clocks in at 5.9 kilos versus 6.2 on the Yoyo, and folds down to 18 by 30 by 55 centimeters versus the Yoyo's 18 by 44 by 52. Both of these strollers claim a weight capacity of 18 kilos in the seat, or 15 if they're selling inside the EU as a result of safety regulations. But the Yoyo can take 8 kilos in the shopping basket versus only 1 kilo for the Jet. Before getting into the mechanical differences between these two models, let's talk a bit about comfort, both for you and your child. As far as your child is concerned, the seats of both of these models are nearly identical in their dimensions, but the Jet does have a somewhat larger canopy and a slightly more user-friendly mechanism for adjusting the position of the seat. When it comes to reclining the seat, the Jet clearly beats out the Yoyo by incorporating not only a full flat recline, but more importantly an adjustable leg rest. With regards to removing the fabrics, the situation is exactly the opposite. The Zen is easy enough, but the Jet is awful. The seat textiles are attached to the chassis by so many screws that I'm led to suspect that they're not intended to be removed at all. A serious oversight when we're talking about transporting messy eating toddlers. As far as you, the adult, using this stroller are concerned, both of these strollers are acceptably easy to fold, with a slight edge going to the Yoyo simply because it has a no-nonsense two-step vertical-only fold, while the Jet, by incorporating horizontal expansion, requires checking a few points in the unfolding process to make sure everything has snapped into place. For carrying your stroller when folded, the Yoyo has a strap, which I love. But the advantage of the Jet is that not only can the bumper bar handle be used to carry the stroller on your shoulder, but it can also be used to wheel your folded stroller around, and more importantly, using this as the carry-on solution means that the Jet comes stock with a rotatable bumper bar, which is usually an extra accessory for ultra-compacts. Regarding the shopping baskets of these two models, it's fine by me to have a low weight capacity on an ultra-compact stroller, but the Jet's capacity of 1 kilo is a little too low, and in my opinion, the basket is also difficult to access. Drivability-wise, the Yoyo has a significantly higher handle, something to consider if you're tall, but the Jet has a slight edge in other aspects of drivability due to its larger back wheels. Okay, let's move on and check out the mechanics of both of these models, top to bottom. We're going to start with the folding setup on both of these strollers. So the Silver Cross Jet has 2 points at which you activate the fold, one at the top, which is a double button setup, which shrinks down the horizontal length of this handle. The second being a much more traditional umbrella stroller type design at the bottom, which is this sort of cross-hatch setup here, which is also going to pull on a hinge that doesn't actually lock via a central bar through the shopping basket. So when I press on these buttons, in addition to, of course, shrinking down this handle, what's happening is that this part here is unlocking. And this is like a plastic cylinder that shoots out of this bar and locks into this plastic construction here. Yeah? This point here is just hinged. It doesn't lock in place. The only other point locking is that umbrella crosshatch design at the bottom. So I would say overall it's not like the weakest setup, But what's going to wind up happening, in my opinion, like my guess, the weakest point of this entire chassis is going to be this point here, simply because they have not really used sturdy enough materials for this locking mechanism in general, and because other elements of the chassis don't lock in place, which is quite common in stroller designs. The kinetic energy is going to push up the chassis as you run over terrain and so on, and it's going to put more pressure onto this kind of weaker plastic design here on the sides. So, and my guess, although it's still such a new stroller, we haven't seen it break there yet, is that that's going to be the weak point of the design. The second point that's weak is that there are a lot of hinged elements over the whole chassis, and as with older umbrella strollers, if you've ever seen an older umbrella stroller has been used for several years, you'll notice that it's quite loose at all of the riveted points. You're going to wind up with that same sort of looseness over time, I would guess, with the Jet, simply due to the sheer number of hinged areas that are put together with rivets. The Babyzen Yoyo also has a two-step fold, but the top step doesn't have very much mechanical complexity. It's simply a matter of pressing in on these two buttons so that you can fold down the handle and the canopy itself. All the real magic happens underneath the stroller, and that is why we have removed the shopping basket, so I can now show you how the folding mechanism works. So the actual folding mechanism then is this handle that you reach underneath and pull on, and when you pull back on that handle, what's happening is that these two rather thick plastic hooks are disconnecting from a metal bar inside this housing here on the back, and this allows all of the hinged areas on the Zen to move away from each other. And then when it locks again, it just pulls again inside and plugs in there. Now, even though those hooks are made of plastic, the angle at which they are connected to the metal bars inside the socket is such that it doesn't really take any wear in any direction that would actually break those hooks. And I've never actually seen this mechanism failing. In addition, it plugs in really tight, and all of the bars that are set up symmetrically around the central locking mechanism sort of brace it so that no additional damage can occur with these hooks from any sort of angles that would damage them. While I haven't seen the actual locking mechanism get damaged, one thing that does happen with Babyzen Yoyo over time is that a lot of these different hinged points on the chassis itself can tend to loosen. But one advantage that the Babyzen has over the Silver Cross Jet is that while the Jet is almost entirely riveted together, the Babyzen Yoyo is put together with screws at all of these points, so you can tighten up those joints and eventually replace any of the bars if you have any wear that can't be fixed just by tightening. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of a closer look at the rear frame of both of these strollers. Neither of these has any rear wheel suspension, which is not something that is actually needed really on an ultra-compact travel stroller, since they're intended for using mostly in airports and malls and lighter terrain in general. When you're going to look at the wheels, so I do like the larger rear wheels on the Jet. I do wish that they had made the front wheels a bit larger as well, but it is still nice to have larger rear wheels. It's going to help when you do have those points of a little bit rougher terrain, or you're going up a curb or something. You need to tilt the stroller backwards to get up onto the curbs. The wheels are large enough on the Babyzen for its purpose as well, but we are moving into a time when manufacturers are starting to experiment with making slightly larger wheels, which is good, adds a little bit of drivability. When you look at the quality of the wheels themselves, though, now I know Babyzen does have problems with the ball bearings inside, sometimes rusting and breaking, and it makes it a little bit difficult when that happens to replace the rear wheels, but they are still essentially removable. So if you pop off the hubcap on the side of the rear wheel, you can actually detach the wheel itself and replace it. On the Silver Cross, again, like with the rest of the chassis, you have this sort of riveting setup, and instead of having a regular axle that locks in place in some way, it's actually a large rivet for the axle itself. I find that to be a bit of a problem. In addition to that, and more seriously, both the rear and the front wheels do not have ball bearings, which is like a total no-no in 2019. It's an industry standard to put ball bearings in your wheels. When you don't do it, the inside of the wheel around the axle will eventually wear down and create very loose wheels, and since you can't easily replace these rear wheels, that's a bit of a problem. Okay, looking at the brake systems, brake system on the Babyzen Yoyo is a very simple sort of a rotating bar brake system on the inside. Very little goes wrong with this sort of a thing. You do have to oil it up every once in a while, but really no problems there. Very simple sort of a setup and mechanically sturdy setup for the brake system. But again, moving over to the Silver Cross, the brake system here incorporates a wire that runs from one side to the other, so that you push down on one pedal, turn it on, the other to lock up the brakes, and there is no adjustment screw at any point on the wire. So when over time, when sort of the inside environment of the brakes changes due to rust or dust, different sorts of things, and the wire doesn't work quite as well, there's no means of adjusting it in order to fix the brake system. So you could very well wind up with brake problems where one wheel brakes and the other doesn't, or won't release from the brake, and so on. And again, you can't actually open up the brake system because it's all riveted together in order to replace the wire either. So that's also a bit of a problem on the Silvercross Jet. Okay, we'll look at the front frame now. The front wheels are of identical sizes on both of these two models, and both of them incorporate that very standard little bit of suspension in the front fork. The front wheels on the Babyzen Yoyo are not easily removable. There's no button for removing them. The advantage to this is that the forks have been set up into the chassis very, very tightly using wave washers and locking washers and so on to get a very tight fit. And Babyzen Yoyo has been around for a long time. I have yet to see any sort of wobbling problems on the front end of the Babyzen Yoyo. Wobbling problems generally occur when the axle has started to wear down the housing on the inside of the front frame here, and then the axle doesn't fit tight enough in, and when you try to go at speed, the wheel begins to wobble. I have never seen any problems like that on the Babyzen. Babyzen does not have any swivel locks as well, so you can't lock the wheels into a inline position, but that's not really necessary provided you don't have wobbling problems. Silvercross by contrast does actually have removable wheel forks, so if you had trouble with the wheels themselves, you could remove and replace them. But this doesn't actually help if you do develop wobble problems down the line. It does have a swivel lock though, so if you do, then you can of course lock it in place. It's not a bad design for a swivel lock. Overall, again, I have problems with using a rivet to hold the wheel in place in the fork. Again, it's a little bit less of a problem with the back wheel since it is the whole assembly of the fork and wheel is replaceable, but still sort of a bad design. And again, they don't have any sort of ball bearings in the front wheels at all. So I would anticipate that you're going to have some looseness issues here in the long run. So which of these strollers is better then? Despite a very comfortable seat with regards to its recline and leg rest, and a lot of leather and flashy hood ornaments, I generally feel that the Jet has little to offer in terms of competition with the Yoyo, at least at its current price point. If they were to sell it at around 2/3 the price of the Yoyo, then it might be something to consider, if you just needed a once-in-a-blue-moon holiday stroller, that is. But to be honest, certain aspects of its engineering would still give me pause. The overly riveted construction of the whole chassis, especially the wheels, the textiles that seem mounted such that they're not intended to be removed, a problematic brake system that can't be opened for repair and adjustment, and worst of all, the lack of ball bearings in the wheels. All of these factors just scream use and throw away to me. And especially now, with nearly a decade's experience with the Yoyo, with seeing how well it holds up over time, even when obviously abused by too much weight and too rough terrain, it's really no contest. I'm sure eventually some model will come out that will clearly top the Yoyo, but at least for me, it's not the Silvercross Jet. Not as it is, at least. In any case, we hope you found this video useful, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.